Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Camille Moore with Connect, and I'd like to thank you for tuning in to ABCs of Sex Trafficking with Debi Tengler. If this is your first time attending this webinar, welcome. If you're returning again for this webinar, thank you. Due to technical difficulties in November, this webinar was rescheduled for today. Before we get started, I just want to say a few housekeeping notes about the platform. You can type in your questions for Debi in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen or via the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. We'd like this to be an interactive session, so please send in questions throughout the webinar. At the bottom center of your screen, you will notice several widgets, which includes one with the handout of today's presentation. Please be sure to download that if you would like. A recorded version of this session will be available on demand on our websites, where you can find additional on-demand webinars for any of you needing last-minute credit hours for C&P testing. Yes, you are able to watch our sessions on demand and still receive credits. This session was approved for 1 credit hour towards C&P IS Domain A Strategic Planning. For everyone joining us live today, we'll be sending out an email tomorrow evening with your certificate of attendance, so please be on the lookout for that. For any of you future viewers watching this session on demand and not live, please email me directly at cmore@connecttravel.com to receive your certificate. I'll share more information about our upcoming webinar at the end of the program, but let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to thank Meet AC for sponsoring today's session. They have provided a video to share about its destination. Here is Atlantic City, New Jersey. How fun does Atlantic City look? Thank you again, Meet AC. Before I introduce Debi, you'll notice on the screen a map of our upcoming events. If you're interested in any of our events, contact my coworker, Kristen Francis, Senior Director of Sales. Now, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Debi Tengler. Debi Tengler is an honors graduate of the College of Biblical Studies, receiving a Bachelor of Science degree in Biblical Studies with an emphasis on biblical counseling. She is also a licensed and ordained minister with World Ministry Fellowship. Her career also exemplifies her belief that with God, all things are possible. Tengler has gone from event planning, where she coordinated picnics of 50 people, to multi-day motivational seminars in the Astrodome with 15,000 people, and then on to helping birth and lead the Alpha Houston office, an evangelism outreach ministry and the first regional office in the United States. Tengler now serves as the Chief Relations Officer, overseeing development, marketing, and church and community relations of the premier child placement agency, Child Family Ministries. When the opportunity arose to assist Arrow with the developmental needs, she knew it was the right fit, as the basis and core of Arrow aligns with Tengler's heart. Her Christian counseling background and great desire to inspire hope perfectly converged with Arrow's heart of helping children and families in crisis, further confirming that Arrow is a place for her to serve. Child and Family Ministries is a Christian provider of child welfare and education services for abused and neglected children and at-risk families. Through the engagement of both government and the local church, Arrow provides an array of services, including foster care, adoption, child sex trafficking rehabilitation, and specialized education. All programs and services advance the well-being of children, families, and communities while promoting Christian responsibility and a commitment to strengthen family life. Tengler and her husband Chris own a business in the Champions area of Houston. Debi, welcome. Thank you again for sharing with us today.
Thanks so much, Camille. It's just absolutely an honor to be with y'all and to get to do this again. So I'm very, very, very excited about it, and really grateful for everyone who's joined us and who's willing to take an interest and become part of the solution and not part of the problem of the atrocities of human trafficking. As we go along today, there are going to be polling questions that take place. And so we'll begin the conversation about human trafficking and the travel industry. I want you to take a look and ask yourself, are you aware that 90% of human trafficking takes place in a hotel or motel? Please let us know. As you think about that question, I also want to ask you too, are you aware that 90% of human trafficking is so close to our own backyard? And many of you are aware, it looks like, of the opportunity that takes place in a hotel. So let me ask you, have you ever considered training to help combat human trafficking in the travel and tourism industry? Take a moment and think about that. Again, you would become part of the solution. It looks like many of you have not quite yet considered that option. I will let you know today of some ways that you can actually begin to get involved in that. One of the things I want to talk with you about is you and me being part of the solution. And with that, I like to say that we need to know our ABCs. We need to become aware and know the signs of human trafficking. I say that's the first line of defense. We need to understand the branding, the boundaries and business that we can implement to be able to make sure that not only are the children safe, but so are our customers, our clients, and the delegates of each of the events that we partake with. The other thing is I always like to make sure and talk about communicating. If you see something, it's going to be your obligation after this to say something. And as William Wilberforce said, you may choose to look the other way, but after today, you'll no longer say that you didn't know. So with that, let's get started. Human trafficking. It's an issue that's been discussed in many different media formats, some television shows and things of that nature. But many people don't even understand what the true definition of it is. To keep it really simple and to be able to help all of us remember it very easily, it's basically the loss of freedom. Anybody that has that loss of freedom is involved in what we are called today modern-day slavery. Human trafficking has two forms of it, and it is actually labor trafficking and sex trafficking. I think it's really poignant that the Connect is doing these sessions because according to one of the great sources that works to combat these atrocities, the Polaris Project, the president and CEO states that most the commercial sex acts most commonly happen in a motel or a hotel. As a matter of fact, they state so highly that 89% of these transactions that take place will take place in a hotel or a motel. I think that's especially important for those of us in the event planning business who are seeking to create something fabulous for our clients, but oftentimes don't understand the impact that is going on right here in our own events. I'll talk a little bit more about that. The next thing I want to show you is, where does this happen? The map that you're looking at is actually one that depicts from the Polaris Project some of the hot spots that are going on. And if you'll notice across this map, it is basically all over, but it is a concentration of the center of the United States. This is one of the key factors that you need to realize. Any major highway is an opportunity for a trafficker to begin to, what I say, continue the trauma bond on the girls that he, or boys, that he is utilizing for his services. What happens is a trafficker will take and remove healthy attachments so that he can get control or dominion over the person that he is enslaving. This is often done by traveling back and forth across state highways. Here in Texas, where I reside, Houston is a premier factor in this, in that all of the highways and byways that we have. But there's now what's going on is the Golden Triangle, and that's from San Antonio to Dallas to Houston and back to San Antonio. A trafficker will work to be able to keep his victim unable to make healthy attachments and move them oftenly and frequently, and therefore they can't be seen as easily within the community. Sadly today, almost 70% of those involved in human trafficking, sex trafficking in particular, are children. These tools and factors that these predators are using on our children are further exemplified in the ways that they can get to them on social media. I want to share with you, first of all, before we go there, and see, do you understand that the average age of a child in trafficking is 13? Residential treatment with Child Family Ministries, and that particular program of ours is called Freedom Place. At Freedom Place, we're a rehabilitative long-term treatment care center for minor domestic girls recovering from the atrocities. It's such a powerful opportunity, but we see things firsthand that validate the information that you'll hear today. Arrow Child and Family Ministries has been in the business of child protective services, working with them for almost 27 years now. It's an important factor to remember because, unfortunately, children in trafficking today, 88% of them, according to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, come from social services. I'll just let you know that about 10 days ago, I looked at that stat again on the NCMEC website, and it was at 86%. We are seeing an increase in the number of children who go missing, and oftentimes those are children within the foster care system. But there's a whole other level of impact that takes place for children that are in foster care. Oftentimes they are in foster care because of abandonment, abuse, or neglect from a healthy family member. That does what we call breaks down trust, and it actually makes them the most likely candidates for what we call a predator trolling social media, and we call them trolls. This is the normal way that a predator will find a trafficking victim and lure them into the sex industry to become a sex slave. Let me just state one thing right here and now. Children cannot consent to sex. Laws are now being enacted that moves them from being criminals to being victims. It changes our conversation dramatically when we begin to look at them as victims, and then we begin to move to find resources for them and ways to collaborate to get them help. In society, if they're a criminal, oftentimes we turn around, block it out of our eyes, and depend on law enforcement to take care of it. I will, I think, share with you today the fact that these children need our help, and we are, in the event planning business, the front line to make that happen. So with the history of safety and security that Arrow has produced nationwide across the 25 years of service that we have had, we have found that there's a high level of trust that can take place for such horrors going on in our society. These children that we serve just in foster care are the primary candidates for these atrocities, but I want to share with you what happens to some of them when they move forward. 1/3 of the runaways are picked up within 48 hours. That means that within 48 hours, there is some pimp who has probably lured them away and is wanting to meet up with them in a mall, at a convenience store, at the bus stop, whatever it may be, to be able to get them into a relationship where they've already convinced them, usually through social media, that they love them, they value them, and they will be there to make them belong to whatever actions they have going forward. That is a sense of a web that they build out, and it is one on what I call a three-legged stool. That three-legged stool meets the very basic needs that each of us have as human beings. It's a three-legged stool that's based on unconditional love, value, and belonging. Funny enough, and I know many of us here are of the Christian faith, funny enough that those are the three things that God said that he would provide to us. His unconditional love, his absolute value in us by sending his son to die for us, and then when he says that he will call us a child of God, we belong to the family of God. The Holy Spirit does what I call wrap the blanket around us and assures us that we belong to the family of God. Traffickers will use these same three things, sadly, and tell them through social media, through phone calls, through building a Romeo relationship, for example. Oh, I love you. I know you're having trouble with your parents, but they don't really love you. Or a foster child who begins to associate that they have no love and value. He'll tell them, I'll value you. I'll buy you anything and everything that you need. Just trust me. Come on, I'll show you. And then he says, not only will you belong to me, I'll make sure you know you belong to me and nobody else can have you. And eventually gets to the point where he will even tattoo them. Oftentimes these tattoos are found on the back of their neck, the side of their face, maybe in a hairline, or even on the inside of their mouth. It's horrific, but it's a fact. I'll tell you more cases that I've experienced with that. These children that are brought into this, usually around the age of 13, their life expectancy is only 7 years. That means that most of the children in trafficking today, of which UT reported that there were 79,000 children in Texas alone, under the age of 18, involved in sex trafficking. If you think about that, the average age, 13, they won't make it to see their 21st birthday. Many of them won't even be able to, old enough to vote before they're either impacted by the lifestyle, the dangerous aspects of that, a bloodborne disease, a sexually transmitted disease, or drug abuse that's usually inflicted upon them. These children that run away that I've mentioned, the odds of them being rescued are 1 in 100. And here I said 74%. The actual stat is rising. This was the stat in November when we began our first conversation. I left it there to let you know that today, just as of yesterday I checked, 88% of these victims are former foster children or have some way been associated. I mentioned a little bit about some of the places in the state that I'm in that are involved and known for some of the trafficking that goes on. But can anybody think about where the number one place is in the United States for trafficking to occur, especially for children? You're welcome to type in your answers and give me a little feedback. Many of you that have been on the call with me before or have heard talks about sex trafficking are actually aware it happens right here in Houston. We are sadly the number one city in the nation that are used and abused in this area. I want to say that there's some reasons behind that. And somebody has mentioned the Super Bowl. I will broaden that category because oftentimes if we think about just one event in particular, we tend to focus on that event and then go about our daily lives after that's over. I will tell you that any event is an opportunity for traffickers. Any event. I actually was in an event with Connect Media here in Texas, did a session on training and being aware of the signs of trafficking, and one of the attendees went to the elevator to freshen up to go to dinner that night with the others she was there with at the conference. She walked to the elevator. 3 young girls were standing there. She was the only adult, but something caught her off guard. These children were about the same age as her daughter. She hadn't planned to go to my session, but all of a sudden the things that she had learned in that session to alert her of the red flags brought up hair on the back of her neck. These children were not on their cell phones. They were not giggling. They were not having a fun time in this grand hotel that had an actual emphasis on Alice in Wonderland in every turn and corner you went to. These were beautiful girls, some makeup, probably around the age of 13, this delegate that attended this conference thought. They were nice dressed. They were wearing jeans, slight heels, and nice tops. But the other thing was they were all carrying the same clutch purse. The hair on her back, I think it probably could have shot darts possibly into the rest of the world because it stood out so strongly on her. They got in the elevator. The tallest girl in the middle pointed to the one on the right and pushed the floor button that they were going to. This tall girl, she was blonde. She said to the dark-haired girl, "You know what to do?" The dark-haired girl nodded yes. "Do you have a key?" The dark-haired girl nodded again yes. Again, my delegate's stomach was turning. She couldn't believe what was standing in front of her. 3 young girls that fit the description of heading into trafficking. She followed, watched where they went off the elevator, got on the elevator, called me immediately because she had taken down my cell phone number. We were instructed her to reach out to the hotel security, and we called law enforcement. Long story shorter, what she experienced at a very nice non-Super Bowl event, if you allow me to say that, was a 16-year-old grooming a 14-year-old and an 11. The dark-haired girl was getting ready to perform her second trick, her second night out. The 14-year-old, it was her first time out. She was scared to death. Thankfully, my friend, through some steps I'll share with you in just a little bit, was part of the rescue of these 3 children. And utilizing tools that we'll talk about, she was able to become part of the solution. It's a pretty exciting opportunity to be part of the solution when you begin to understand what the real problem looks like. I want you to know that being part of the solution does an amazing thing for us. It gives us the ability to not be despaired, but to have hope, to help these children to be able to get set free from the atrocities that they have innocently, most of the time, found themselves in. I have a hashtag out there, and it's called Together Kids Win. Because you see, when each of us does our part to protect them, to provide awareness, and to become part of the solution, we can help break these chains that these kids are bound in. I'd like to talk with you about the awareness aspect, going back to our ABCs. How do you prepare for events to fight human trafficking? What you're doing today is the first step. By taking the time to become acquainted with how this is happening, who it's happening to, and how it may occur at anything that you are a part of, and ways that you can build in walls of defense to protect your clients, your delegates, and the very least of these, the children who are suffering atrocities right underneath our very noses. It's a pretty exciting opportunity to be able on the front lines to say we can become part of the solution. I talked a little bit in the ABC an overview that I told you about branding. I'd like to introduce you to the code. The code.org is something that was formed by ECPAT. And ECPAT USA put together this way for vendors to come together in the hospitality industry and make a covenant agreement that in no way would they participate in the exploitation of children. And what that means is you sign an agreement, and it's outlined very clearly, and we will be able to serve these children by all of us coming together. That would be caterers, that would be anybody who is involved in the scaffolding, in the housekeeping, in the contracts with restaurants. Every area agreeing to the fact that they will not allow children to be trafficked in anything they participate with in business, and they will do something about it, including getting trained, having their security teams at the hotels or the venues trained in what to do should they recognize what a child trafficking situation looks like. They will also agree that their front desk will have cameras, and these cameras will be able to be utilized should there be a situation arise. Because you see, today, traffickers are looking for our conferences and events. They're not just looking for the Super Bowl or the Big Four or, any other major sporting event. They are looking for any place people gather, especially if they stay in a hotel. I don't know if y'all have seen it recently, but in the news just in the past few days in Houston, one of the survivors is now suing several, but she included the hotel where she had been trafficked. There is laws, there are stipulations that require us to have our eyes on and to make a wall of defense. Participating with the code will be one of those areas. I am really excited to hear, Krista, that y'all are part of the code, and it's been a great way to help and educate your clients. It began overseas, and it, for a while, was very slow in rolling out in the United States. There has been a much wider increase in the use of it, and I'm grateful to know that you are a part of that and beginning to take steps to protect everybody and brand yourself that we will not allow children to be trafficked in any event or venue that we utilize. You need to establish policies against your sexual exploitation of children. That includes your own operations. If you're in a large corporation, there are ways and avenues to begin to get engaged to make sure that the corporation itself and their travel policies ensures that children are not being exploited or trafficked. Train everyone on the rights, the red flags, and actions to take, but more importantly even, are actions not to take. I will let y'all know that the situation that happened in the hotel I talked about in the elevator, my now friend and delegate, she knew from the training that she had had not to jump in and confront these girls or to make it known that she was following them. She knew to take the steps that were necessary to get help at a bigger, higher, broader level, and that's exactly what she did. I want you to know that there's now been a course created. It's an online course, and it is also designed for those in the corporate world to be educated on the signs of trafficking, and it's called Red Flags, and it's done by an organization called Third Millennium. They are doing everything they can to make it available to law enforcement, healthcare professionals, and the hospitality industry. I highly encourage you to check it out and to become acquainted with the Red Flag course and Third Millennium. Part of you and me being able to say something when we see something is to actually take a step that involves a really great app, and it's called TrafficCam.com. You can download these to your phone. You can download them to all of your corporate equipment. You can make sure that it's part of your policy that when your employees travel or even your delegates come to conventions or venues, that they will in fact use this TrafficCam app where they go into their hotel room after checking in. It's a very simple app. There are 4 boxes on the screen, and it allows you to take pictures of the hotel room. Why is that important, and how can that be used? I want you to know that what happens when you take these 4 pictures right upon check-in is it's downloaded into a database, and retired veterans will take those pictures and they'll put them into a database. So when a child goes missing, oftentimes the first place that investigators will look will be on many of the dark pages, the back pages. And a girl will post a picture of herself for sale. Either she's taken a selfie of herself in very provocative, erotic positions or clothing, or her trafficker has taken it and he's promoting her out there. Oftentimes what will happen is the background is the picture of the hotel room that she is in. It's a very good app because what will happen is you and I both know in the hospitality industry, every hotel tries to pretty much brand themselves uniquely with their either wallpaper or the headboards or colors in the room or some design that identifies where they are. When a child goes missing and she's found being advertised on one of the back pages, this database can pull up and, like face recognition, be able to identify where she is. The whole goal of this is to be able to help us quickly identify where she is and put forces in place that will be able to more than likely help to reduce that low rescue number. It will give us an opportunity to know where she is and to know how to intervene. And it's done in such a way at the NCMEC level where law enforcement is then notified and a very, usually very brief, very quiet operation goes on and takes place. I will tell you that many who were at the conference, which was a very large conference at the one in Texas where I told you about the elevator experience with the young girls, nobody at the conference even knew what was taking place except the woman that identified them, myself, and the hotel security. It was done in a very professional manner that these children were rescued. I hope you understand that so you don't feel a risk for your groups or organizations that as they begin to identify this, that it will cause disruption. It won't cause disruption, but it will cause a great sense of hope to know that they are part of a solution for something that is so much bigger. They may have never known how to impact it before. The other number that's on this screen right now, the call number, is the 888-3737-888 number. And I want you to know that that is a number that your delegates can reach out and utilize. And there is that's not a typo on there as to how that number is laid out. I often, when I'm speaking, I ask people, how many of you can tell me the phone number for the first house that you lived in or the house that you lived in when you were about 5 or 6 years of age? Do you remember what that telephone number is? Then let me ask you another question. How many of you can remember your Social Security number? There's usually a wide disparagence between who can remember the phone number and who can remember their Social Security number. Almost 100% will say that they've remembered their Social Security number. This is the Social Security number for help for children in need. It's a very simple number. There's only 3 numbers in the entire phone number. But if you can remember that and encourage your staff, your clients, and your delegates to do the same thing, we will have a number ready where if your phone is not with you, you can then, when you get to your cell phone, call this number and give them the information they need to help children be rescued. The other thing that can happen is if you see a situation, you may be able to text, "Be free," and that will also begin to raise the authorities' interest in getting you resources or resources to the area that's needed to rescue these children. These are some simple ways that when you promote them to your organization, to your groups, and to your clients, we become part of the solution. I mentioned to you a little bit about Freedom Place. I want to let you know that this is a place where we are working with girls, but we've gone on and expanded a little bit farther than that in the continuum of care. We are actually now creating a restoration foster care. It's one of the first in the state of Texas and one of only a handful in the nation. Not all children are needing long-term rehabilitative care. Some children need a safe home to be able to get some therapy and to be able to get out of the lifestyle that they have been thrown into. We are creating these foster homes as well to be able to serve boys, girls, and children who are at their very lowest. Right now in the United States, boys are also trafficking victims. They make up about 1/3 of all trafficking victims. I will tell you, oftentimes, they never, when they have this happen to them, they do not come out and they do not seek therapy because there's very little out there. We're working to change that as well and to serve children who desperately need us to be their protectors and their defenders. We would love for you to check us out or refer people to us and be able to help. We do this in Maryland and we do this in Texas with Arrow, and there are other organizations that are willing to do it. I have to tell you that more and more people are wanting information about this because we can have you and your teams volunteer to help these families who are seeking to restore these lives. We can also have you help at the facility that we have called Freedom Place. Again, a premier and one of the only facilities in the nation. As a matter of fact, when Freedom Place opened in 2012, we were the first in the state of Texas. I'm sad to say that today in 2018, there's no one else doing it right now. Working with children and the rehabilitation of the atrocities that face is expensive, it's time-consuming, and we don't say that there's a destination to their healing. We say that there's a launch to their healing, to be able to help them journey through these atrocities day in and day out, and to be able to recover from them as these horrible things come back to their mind, to equip them with tools to form the healthy attachments that they so lost out there. We are really, really, really excited. Please also be part of the solutions. Any of your events that need someone to speak, let us know. You can also go and explore the Polaris Project. And then Ashton Kutcher has also done an amazing job with the resources that he has available. He has formed an amazing group called We Are Thorn, and that's THORN. You can see facts and stats on data on who this is happening to, how it is happening, but you can also become equipped with the latest information. There's also a link on his page to the NCMEC site as well that shares with you about the numbers and stats. I want you to know that today in the United States, there's over 428,000 children in foster care. If you take and consider the fact that these children are the likely candidates, and you begin to look at, if this were another country, our nation would put every resource behind helping 428,000 children, especially if they had the propensity to become slaves. With this in mind, I just want you to know that this doesn't have to be an overwhelming task. It has to simply be a step that we all agree together. We can make a difference. We can become the solution, helping children to win. There's several different information that are coming out now as well for businesses, especially in the hospitality industry. There is exchangeinitiative.com, and they are putting together resources available for the hotel industry, hoteliers, conventions, and it is a great piece of information that actually Deborah Gardner passed on to me, and I'm so grateful for it. And you can go to exchangeinitiative.com/real-resources and get that information put out there. We are very excited about what's going on, and I'm excited to answer some of your questions at this point and see about what you want to talk about some more. One of the questions that I'm getting is about the red signs that I discussed. Some of those things include, if you're in an area, say in a hotel, and you walk up to the situation as my friend did, and the hair on your neck just begins to stand up, that is truly one of the signs that we tell you to look for. Oftentimes, if there is a child who They are not looking up. They seem to have a very low self-confidence. Their attire doesn't seem to match either who they're with or the venue or the population that you're around. Take a second look. See if they will engage in a conversation, a simple conversation, such as, "Hey, how are you?" They may look up at you and look away very quickly. Understand that you can then begin to process through. Are their clothes ragged? Do they look like they haven't had a bath? Are they wearing more expensive clothes than maybe a child should be wearing? Oftentimes as well, that is a clue. Do they seem to have a lot of gift cards on them or multiple credit cards? One of the ways that traffickers are now having children come into a convention or event is they're actually giving them gift cards that look like an American Express or a Visa, and they're checking in with that and their fake ID. It is powerful to know that all of these identifiers work around the world. All of these key factors work around the world as well. The code has initiated that. And when you go online and begin to research the resources that are available, you can then begin to identify that you have the tools to help equip your delegates. If you go to the Third Millennium Red Flags, you can begin to pull down that information and get properly equipped in all the ways to be able to inform and be informed about the red flags. I'll tell you another story real quickly about one of those situations that happened with us. I went into a restaurant with some colleagues of mine in a little bitty small town just outside of Houston. We sat down for lunch on a Friday afternoon in a very large Mexican restaurant, and we were the only ones in the restaurant. What we discovered was as we were finishing our meal, the restaurant set down two people next to us. The entire restaurant was empty, and they set them right next to us. Immediately, the three of us that were sitting there, my colleagues and I, saw a young child who was nervous. She looked as if she was Mayan or Asian descent, very petite. She had on off-brand kid tennis shoes. She had her little capri jeans rolled up some. She would not pull up to the table. She actually could not even look up at the man sitting across from her, which immediately had me look at him. Sadly, he was between the ages probably of 70 to 75. He had a veteran's hat on, but he didn't fit the equation. He operated in such a way that seemed to be intimidating and harsh, but yet trying to cover up as if he was posing as her grandfather. The young child shook her knee the entire time she sat there. She would not order food. He ordered for her. When the food came, she just pushed it around. We tried desperately to get her attention, trying to get her to the bathroom. Sitting right there, literally his shoulder was very near mine. She would not move. She would not leave his space. She watched him even as he went up to pay, so scared, and we knew exactly what this looked like. We began taking pictures of her, of him, of their car, and of all of the things that we could associate with as discreetly as possible. Because one of the things you need to realize, it's best not to intervene without professional help. You have to be able to take and allow the proper authorities to step in and intervene, because that trafficker has the likelihood of harming her greater or harming you, and we cannot allow that to happen. So what we have to do is take the information, send it to the proper authorities, and let them take action. By doing so, we enable them to fully and safely either rescue, follow, or identify what is going on. I want to tell you that I'm sad to say this young girl was in fact being trafficked. The man took her back to the house that he had because, I don't suggest doing it, but because of the expertise that the three of us had and getting on phone with the FBI, we were able to see that he was taking her to an address where 3 men were waiting for her. We did notify the authorities, and we did work for them. And then we were able to come forth. And then we were able to bring out the solution for this child and her situation. You can be part of the answer. You can make a difference. You don't have to get actively engaged in the rescue, but you can notify the authorities. All of these tools are available. May I also just suggest that in any of the information that you utilize, that you be able to put in your delegate packets, please put a highlighted spot on this. Warn all of your delegates that come in. Let them all know as your employees travel that we are aware and we're going to fight this together. Stay updated on the information. Do yourself a favor, check with the NCMEC website. Check on the resources. Be willing to learn more as we go along, because the resources that are available are growing and available to each of us. More and more now today than even in 2012 when we began. It's a pretty amazing aspect to be able to tell you that these girls are able to get rehabilitated. These young boys can find hope and get rehabilitated. We have children on our campus who graduate from the high school on our campus, who go on to college. We also have in our foster homes the ability for the ones who have had children to be able to have those children with them in their restorative process. And I need you to know that that is vital to these children, because oftentimes their traffickers will hold their babies as hostage while they make them go out and perform tricks. It's estimated that when people go into a hotel room, they no longer need to watch pornography. They can pull up the back pages and order a child like they can pizza. They can even select what they want when they order a child, just like you can order and select the toppings on a pizza. It's sad to say, but because of these dark pages and the allurement of it sitting in a hotel room where nobody can see them, they think that this is, nobody will know, it won't matter to anybody else, they're just going to have a little romp. But I have to tell you, they click on a button that says that they want small feet, boy-like figure, small cup size in her bra. They can select all of these things that are indicative of a prepubescent child, and they can be delivered within 20 minutes. I want you to know that you're a part of a solution. Don't get discouraged with this or think it's too big. It is a part of us to come together with. I noticed that, Emma, you talk about the child with the tape over her mouth in the airport. Let me tell you that the woman I told you about who went to the elevator and saw these children, when she came from Connecticut through the Atlanta airport, one of the biggest billboards that she saw, and the one that stuck to her, was actually the one of the child. It's a kind of a grayscale, black and white, and this child, big eyes, dark hair, had duct tape across her mouth. It stuck out in this woman's presence. And what she said was, when she and I accidentally met at the conference, she said, "Why is that billboard sticking out to me?" And I told her simply, because you're probably being alerted to this, and there's some action that you will have to take, and you need to get informed and equipped, having no idea that later, that next night, she would actually experience and be involved in a rescue of 3 children. This is one of the things that we have to do, is to pay attention to the signs around us, the billboards, but also of what is taking place with children right in our own backyard. I actually had the opportunity to be able at an airport one day. I do a lot of traveling, and I was standing at the baggage claim area, and I had gone to the restroom right off the plane and noticed a child crying, very upset, and she didn't seem like she was related to the woman she was traveling with. When we got down to baggage claim, she kept trying to get away from this woman. It was a red flag to me. I walked over to the information booth. I alerted them that security needed to be called, and I described to her the situation that was taking place. I am happy to say that within seconds, 5 officers appeared, quietly walked up, not to intimidate the child, and basically began an interrogation right there with a trained member to be able to help the child cope. Gratefully, the woman had all the documentation she needed, and she was actually a grandchild. But the police officers later said to me, "Thank you so much for pointing this out. If more people did, we would probably have more children rescued." I want you to know, too, that this was especially poignant for me. Recently, you may have heard stories about a 13-year-old child that went missing in Houston. She went missing on a Friday. And Saturday evening, she was just out on the west side of Houston. Saturday evening, she was found across the border in Mexico. This was a 13-year-old, very intelligent, beautiful young child that had some bullying taking place in the high school, and she'd been building a relationship with a man she knew was older. She thought he was in Laredo. What we didn't know was I had another friend who had heard about this awareness in trafficking. She called me immediately because a child had come to her. She thought she was an adult. She presented as an adult with ID and everything and asked her for help to be able to get a bus ticket to Laredo. When she notified me, I began to call law enforcement and get some alerts. And it was because someone stepped up and said something that we were able to put information on the ground to law enforcement to be able to get this child and get her rescued before she wound up lost somewhere overseas. Many people believe that this is something that just happens with children or adults being brought over from overseas. That is a great misconception that it's our job to help break. These are domestic-born children who right here in our own backyard are being lured into the hands of predators, male, female, family members, and strangers. And that's done through a series of bonding, becoming their Romeo, meeting their needs, and then becoming their great hero on a horrible dark horse. It is my absolute pleasure to be able to talk with y'all about this. While it's horrible, I believe that it's our duty to use our gifts and use what talents God has given us to be able to help the least of these. Mine just happens to be a big mouth. If you do need a speaker, I know plenty of them all across the nation, and we can work to get you informed, profound, great speakers who can help you become part of the solution, along with all your delegates. We're very grateful for this opportunity. Any other questions? I really want to tell you it's an honor. I want to thank you for your time today. Yes.
I think someone had a question in the Q&A box at the bottom one. Yeah.
Can these resources be used for international events? Absolutely. And ECPAT is a great organization to work with in that. And they will be more than happy to provide resources for you. Also, We Are Thorn provides some opportunities as that as well. And let me just tell you as well that there is the Center on National Exploitation out of D.C. They are going to be hosting a summit the April 4th through the 7th. We will actually be with a team, a panel team, and we will be speaking at that event. We're working out details now, but that is a fabulous way also to connect both nationally and internationally, is to attend that event and to get a broader perspective. Any other questions? The other thing that many of you can do, some of you know of corporations and organizations that will also do grants to fund awareness. That is a powerful way to begin to partner and to raise up more people who are able to talk. We utilize survivors in our therapeutic process, and we have survivors on our team, and we have survivors that we begin to implement, and when they're ready and able, they're another great source to have to speak at your event. Let me just state one thing here on their behalf. Survivors have been abused and used for money. It's a supply and demand business. Do me a favor, make sure that you compensate your survivor speakers that come in and compensate them well. It's another way that we can take and turn what was meant for such evil and horror into a positive format. They are worthy of their labor in the sense that they are doing something now to help inform, equip others, and to also be part of their therapeutic process going forward. Do not leave them out as one of your most valued speakers. Their experiences has given them the ability to inform and equip, and will do so in a very professional manner, and we'll be happy to help you with that as well if you need it. I said a minute ago, this is a supply and demand business. If we cut down on the demand, there won't be a need for supply. Children do not have to supply the horrors that are being requested of them out there. Anything else? Tough subject today. I often get the time to speak, and I recently was at a church sharing about this information, and a pastor had asked me to speak on it, and I said, well, I hope today that the sleeping ratio will go way down in our congregation because we're going to talk about sex, and we're going to get real. And it was, laughter was received, and it helps to lighten up the subject a little bit, but it is serious. And we do thank you so much for taking the time to be a part and to allow everybody that you're affiliated with to learn more, to know more, and to become part of the solution.
Debbie, if you can just say the name of the DC event again in April. I think some people probably wanted to write it down.
All right. It is the Center on for National Sexual Exploitation. And I think that, Camille, you'll provide follow-up emails, and I can email everybody about that. And it is happening April 4th through the 7th in D.C., and the National Center on Sexual Exploitation.
All right, if no one has any more questions, I just want to thank Debbie again for sharing with us today. This was a topic that deserved attention and needed to be talked about. You can learn more about Connect's past and upcoming webinars on all of our websites listed on the screen now. For those watching live today, you will receive an email with your certificate of attendance for this session. Again, if you're watching on demand, please email me for your certificate. It will not come to you automatically. If you have any questions, please email me at cmoore@connecttravel.com. I would like to say after this webinar concludes, you will be directed to a short survey. If you could fill that out, that would be great so we can get your feedback. And we hope you all will join us again February 20th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for another informative session with Connect speaker Daryl Hammond, sponsored by Providence Warwick. Thank you again for joining us, everyone. I hope everyone has a great day.